The thing with favoritism and mistreatment of queens on Drag Race is that it comes in many different forms. It can be in the challenges, the critiques, the edit, the storylines, or even simply just the results of the show. Some of these are a little harder to point out since judging drag is subjective, and there's no objective way of doing it, even though so many fans think that there is. But some forms of mistreatment or favoritism are simply actions done by the producers that are clear as day, and many of these happened on All Stars 10. Usually when I would do the favoritism or mistreatment videos, I would make queen-specific videos. However, for All Stars 10, I'm going to do one video about the season as a whole, since the queens appeared in so few episodes, and most of the mistreatment or favoritism that happened is very similar. Also, yeah, this title because if people can steal my ideas, conclusions, and talking points and put it in a simplified package that appeals to the fandom and get away with it, I can reclaim that and be an asshole too. If you would like to help the channel, since YouTube hates its creators, you can like this video or of course dislike it. Leave a comment and of course make sure you're subscribed. You can also become a member of the channel, and I want to thank all of these lovely people here who have become members so far. They have seen this video before the rest of you and they already have other videos to watch. Some of those videos being channel exclusive content. Now let's get back to the video. Let's start with the most obvious case for All Stars 10. The favoritism of Ginger Minj, Jorgeous, and Bosco. These three queens competed in different brackets, but all of them share one thing in common: the favoritism they received with the challenges that they competed in. Before starting a season, Drag Race producers map out the season so that they can at least somewhat match the guest judges, the lip sync songs, and the challenges. They also, of course, have to be prepared for the shooting of the set challenges with the stages that they have to prepare, the songs, the props, and whatnot. With that, they also know the cast at least a week before the competition, and each queen is told what kind of outfits to bring. If you're a long-time viewer of Drag Race, you already know all of this. But All Stars 10 was unique in the sense that the queens for their brackets got different instructions on what to bring and what to prepare. However, the 3 episodes for the 3 brackets, in theory, did have diverse challenges. One was a looks-related challenge, then it was a performing challenge, and then there was an acting/improv challenge. These 3 challenges then ended up being tailor-made for Bosco, Jorgeous, and Ginger to do well in them for their brackets. Starting with Bosco, what do we know about her? Or rather, what do the producers know about her? Solely from her time on season 14. She has a very unique aesthetic. Her only challenge wins came in acting, improv, or comedy challenges. And they also know that she's not a strong performer. So what happens in bracket 1? The song for the performance challenge is a hard rock inspired song, something that Bosco spends the entire episode telling us is exactly in her wheelhouse and that this is her challenge to lose. Then the acting challenge is an improv challenge where you're supposed to be quick-witted and work well with a minimal script while also creating a character. These kinds of challenges are the ones Bosco had won originally. And lastly, the looks-based challenge was the makeover challenge. This challenge is the worst judge challenge on every single season of Drag Race. Some seasons they want the queens to be in the exact same outfit, sometimes the pattern should be different, sometimes the color should be different, sometimes the outfits should be completely different. There is no rule to this challenge, but the queens that usually do well in these are the ones that have a specific and unique aesthetic, like Bosco. Also, just to throw this in here since I will not be mentioning Bosco anymore in the video, show me how you burlesque for the tournament. Come on! The producers knew what they were doing. They knew that Bosco beats anyone with that song, and after Bosco's win in the first round, they could hope for a way to push her into the final top 2. But alas, in the second round, Bosco went up against Ginger, and, you know, had she gone up against Lydia, I could see them doing some editing magic to have her win against her, but yeah, you cannot convince me Bosco wins a non-burlesque themed lip sync against Ginger or Jorgeous, for that matter. And speaking of Jorgeous, what do the producers know about Jorgeous from her previous seasons? She's a beast on stage, and they bullshitted a design challenge win for her. So what are the bracket 2 challenges? A design challenge, and then 2 performing challenges. I don't think I need to go further into explaining how bracket 2 was set up for Jorgeous to advance from there, but I do want to to mention that the choice for the challenges in the second part of the season were also made to help Jorgeous. The talent show in episode 11 was 100% there to help Jorgeous, because the talent, and I'm using that word very loosely here, show has turned into a lip sync for a minute on stage to a poorly produced song. And who does lip syncing on the stage the best? Jorgeous! You could guarantee she was going to do well here. We could also mention that this challenge was there for Bosco to do well in, since burlesque in all of its forms usually is a talent show, which also happened here. And the lip sync tournament in the end, I mean, do I even have to explain how that benefits Jorgeous? Lastly, Ginger Minj. What do the producers know about Ginger Minj? She is a great singer, a comedy queen, and a good performer who only does poorly in looks-based challenges. So for her bracket, her looks-based challenge is turned into a character writing comedy challenge that's done in pairs, so that someone could help Ginger with the actual design and sewing portion of the challenge. I'll talk about the judging of that challenge a little later when we talk about the mistreatment of Denali, Alyssa, and Cynthia. The performing challenge Ginger got for her bracket was a country-themed performing challenge, and all three of her seasons prior, Ginger did dip into that country twang. And lastly, for the acting challenge, she also got an improv, comedy, create a character challenge. And most of the challenges she had won in the past were these kinds of challenges. Obviously, the biggest point of contention with Ginger was that first challenge in her bracket. That was not an actual design challenge, but rather a character-based challenge. And in the second portion of the season, Ginger got the Snatch Game, which she had previously won twice and was safe once, which is yet another improv comedy, you could even say character creation challenge. And then there was also the talent show, which is, a free-for-all challenge. These two challenges are staples of Drag Race now, but do you know what type of a challenge is also a staple of Drag Race? A ball! That's actually older than Snatch Game. They should have done a ball instead of the talent show, since the finale was essentially another performing challenge. The thing with Bosco, Jorgeous, and Ginger is that they all did excel in these challenges. There have been seasons where queens got favoritism with either the casting or the challenges, or both of them, and then they still could not perform well, but the production would then still crown them or keep pushing them. But the weird thing is, people are not mad at the production for those queens' success on the show, but they are mad at three queens, well, actually, no, two, because everyone is ignoring the favoritism of Bosco because she's a fan favorite. Two queens got favoritism, even though one of them had proven how strong of a competitor she was on 2 seasons prior, being the strongest competitor now in 3 different seasons of Drag Race, and the other was a clear team player that vibes with the production. Of course, it would have been much better had it been more fair, but Drag Race stopped being fair when they left Logo. Ginger's win in this season would have been much more satisfying had the challenges that she got simply been less tailored to help her, but I know the fans still would have complained, since Ginger is not a fan favorite. But after she and Raj O'Hara lost the crown on All-Star 6 because the show needed to show that RuPaul is not transphobic, they both deserved a crown as a way to apologize for the nonsense of losing All-Star 6 that both of them dominated. Now, whenever there is favoritism, there needs to be mistreatment. You have to respect the balance, Siaga. I think the biggest receiver of mistreatment in this season, but seemingly really on any season that she's on, is Denali. People are going to immediately point to her lip sync against Ginger as a way of mistreatment, but let's be real, the song they lip sync to is not a good lip sync song. I mean, it's not a good song, and their two approaches are so different that it's pretty hard to say that one did better than the other. People will then point to how all the other queen said it should have been Denali that won the lip sync, and that's fair, they were there, that's their opinion, they feel like Denali was robbed. So, of course, when those queens had the opportunity to give their flowers to Denali, by giving her their say 4 points, they all gave those points to Denali, right? Because she was robbed, right? It wasn't all just support for the sake of going against the frontrunner in their bracket, right? Oh, wait, no, they did not give the points to Denali, they gave them to Cynthia. I guess Denali did not do well enough to have her co-stars put their money where their mouth is. Ain't that something? Other than this mistreatment that came from her fellow castmates, Denali's mistreatment lay in the judging of the first episode of her bracket, and then in the choice by the judges of who would be brought back for the finale. The first episode in question is that not design challenge episode, where the queens did the challenge in pairs. They were critiqued individually, but then the results came in pairs. Now you might be wondering, why did this happen? Well, because in that episode, the only queen that got only positive critiques was Denali. They praised her for her look and her bizarre but somehow successful story with Acid Betty. Ginger and Daya, who ended up winning the challenge, also got all positive critiques, but both of them got one mixed critique that the show tried to pass off as fully positive. Furthermore, the judging in that episode was inconsistent. The queens were supposed to create opposites, clearly pushed by the production to go elemental with their designs based on the materials provided, with the most prominent props being water-based. So, okay, of course, you pick water, and then you pick what's opposite of water. Air. Oh wait, no, the opposite of water is not air, it's fire. The theming of the character for Cynthia, Alyssa, Denali, and Acid was a little samey, sure, but it was that way because of what the production provided. Like, in what world are air and water opposites? In what world do you look at what Daya and Ginger did and go, ah yes, opposites? Denali got robbed of a top 2 placement in this episode, and it was clear that this happened because they were protecting Ginger and Daya. Similar mistreatment is done to Alyssa and Cynthia in this regard, but we'll talk about that later. Denali's last bit of mistreatment came at a point where she was not even on the show anymore. We were told that the regular judges were going to each pick one eliminated queen that they would want to see back for the finale. You know, the regular judges of Drag Race, the beacons of taste. The co-producer, Michelle Visage, co-producer, Ross Matthews, and ICE supporter, T.S. Madison. Totally unbiased group of people who will definitely make the most optimal decision that will make sense with the competition before and after that point. Ross Matthews picks Mistress Isabelle Brooks, for whose elimination he was not there. When I made that little short about the nonsense of this, people were like,
you're so stupid. There's this thing called a phone. They told him that over the phone.
Or like some people were like actually, assuming that beforehand he had already selected Mistress, and then when she got eliminated, that was his pick. We shouldn't be having to assume how things happen on the show. We should be shown how they happen. This is a competition for money. Like, these queens earn money on this show. It shouldn't be this nonsensical. It shouldn't be set up for some queens to be in more episodes than others, or for some queens to actually have a chance at winning the grand prize while others don't. T.S. and Michelle choose to bring back Carrie Colby, a person so devoid of personality and performing skills that I'm convinced that she's somehow related to Jessica Simpson. Mistress was the worst competitor out of the top 8 when she was eliminated. And she's not a strong performer. She's not doing anything if she's back in that finale. Carrie Colby is even worse in that regard, since her only above safe placement in the show's history came in this season, and that was only on a technicality. And she's not a good performer, which we saw in the finale. Like, how are you gonna have a boring performance to disease? This was used to further beat down Mistress as the villain and to give Carrie her quote-unquote well-deserved spot in the second portion of the season, since Mistress outsmarted her and Nicole Page Brooks, and they were not capable of overpowering Mistress's strategy. This was so wasted on Mistress and Carrie, and it's a travesty that none of those 3 judges had picked Denali, who, out of the queens that did not advance, had the best track record and was the best performer out of those 9. Much better than most of the queens in the top 9. However, we know why she was not brought back. She could legitimately be a threat to Ginger, Bosco, or Jorgeous' chances at reaching the final 2, since she could pretty much beat anyone in a lip sync. People often say that I take Drag Race too seriously, but like I've just mentioned, yeah, it's a competition commissioned for $200,000, and the queens get paid for each episode they are on top of the residuals that are going to get later. They invest a lot of money into going on Drag Race, and they're the only reason that we watch Drag Race. I would much rather the show start giving flowers to someone like Denali, who's a well-rounded performer and a TV character, rather than one-off gimmick queens and storylines that we got with Mistress and Carrie Colby. Two queens that got nonsensical critiques in the 7th episode of the season are Alyssa Hunter and Cynthia Fontaine. You might assume that, since they're Spanish-speaking queens, that the mistreatment will be, related to that. However, this time around, the mistreatment that happened here actually was not related to that. Well, not fully. It was rather about the designs and the construction of Cynthia's and Alyssa's looks. So, whenever the queens have to create looks, they get fabric and unconventional materials, which can be anything really, like from basic props that cannot be used as fabric, or like plastic bags, netting, curtains, blankets, towels, your mom. And the point of the challenge has always been to show how those unconventional materials were used to create a good look. This is what Cynthia and Alyssa wore on the runway. They were criticized for having some parts of their outfit look like painted cardboard. That is because that's what some parts of the outfit were made from. Has that not been the point of the challenge since its inception? Haven't queens been criticized for not using actual unconventional materials during these challenges? Why are Cynthia and Alyssa getting shit for doing what the challenge asked of them to do? On top of that, the stories they wrote for their characters make the most sense. Cynthia and Alyssa's characters are funny, but somehow actually sensible. What did the two of them do here that the show had not asked of them? And yet, they got the worst critiques. Later, after Cynthia goes through to the top 9, in the Snatch Game, she portrays Dracula. And RuPaul is laughing at and with Cynthia. Was Cynthia's portrayal great? No. But was it funny? I mean, Ru laughed. Did Cynthia stay in character the whole time? Yes. So, how was she in the bottom 2, next to ażdzhole and Mistress, who essentially played the exact same non-funny caricature? And I say not funny because RuPaul did not laugh. How was Cynthia in the bottom 2 after we watched season 17 Snatch Game, where Lexi Love broke character constantly? She did not make Ru laugh while filming Snatch Game, and then the production and the judges tried to gaslight us into thinking that she placed high. Are we kidding here? Of course, this is part of a larger problem of the show mistreating queens whose first language is not English, especially Spanish-speaking queens. I've made a video about that like 7 years ago or something like that. Yeah, don't watch that. I recommend that you watch Robbie's video on this subject. But back to All Stars 10. I'm going to talk about 2 more queens in this video. One received mistreatment and the other received favoritism. And they both came from the same bracket. The mistreated queen in question is Tina Burner. The thing with Tina is that she got mistreatment from all sides. The queens, the judges, the production, and probably even the fans. While I do think that during her original season, Tina's aesthetic left a lot to be desired, she looked good on All Stars 10. However, she was constantly bullied by Mistress and Carrie because her makeup was bad, emphasis on was, or because she looked like a man. The latter critique is more horrible because it came from Carrie Colby, a trans woman. There's this notion on Drag Race, but like in queer circles in general, that the only acceptable type of a queen, or a queer person in general, is a highly feminine one. God forbid you as a man look masculine, or are masculine, or have masculine features. I understand that this is down to counter misogyny that's often present in our everyday culture, that's also influenced queer culture, but doing the exact opposite, meaning vilifying masculinity and glorifying femininity, is not the answer, because on one hand, that's just stupid. Like, what are you doing? And then on the other, it's actually conservative, not progressive. Like, you're still upholding the gender binary. You're still perpetuating stereotypes that I doubt you, and in this case, you means Carrie, would allow. And In fact, would label as discrimination if it was used against you. What's awful in these scenarios also is that even though neither Mistress nor Carrie were shown as good characters for bullying Tina, they still prospered more in the competition. Mistress advanced into the top 9, and Tina had to try to help Carrie get into the said top 9. Carrie, of course, did not advance, but was then chosen to be brought back for the finale, essentially one-upping Tina as well. Tina also got a lot of nonsensical critiques thrown her way. In the verse, roast, performing challenge, the judges pretty much told her that she was doing too much. What does that mean? This is even worse when you remember that Jorgeous and Mistress were in the top 2. Jorgeous, who burns about 2,000 calories anytime she performs a 2-minute number, was praised for her energy and for the lyrics that she did not write herself, and Mistress was praised for not even being able to raise her arms fully. I am not even kidding about that. The show did not want to give Tina a top 2 placement here because they had to ensure Mistress goes into the top 9 because she was their biggest villain. We'll talk about her next. After how horrible the design challenge in episode 4 was, Tina being the only one with a good look and the other 5 queens not even having serviceable looks, they should have given the win to Tina without the top 2 lip sync. 5 points to her. Nobody's in the top 2. She's the only one there that actually did the challenge right. Last, and somewhat least, it's the favoritism of Mistress Isabelle Brooks. So I've already mentioned here and there some bits, but generally speaking, Mistress got the favoritism from the production and the judges, simply because she was the main villain of the season. During her bracket, she did not really excel at any challenges. Her one top 2 placement came after absolutely nonsensical critiques about her performance. Then in the top 2 lip sync against Jorgeous, because they knew they couldn't lie to us that Mistress beat Jorgeous in a lip sync, they gave them a totally undeserved joint win and 2.5 points each. This way, in case of a tie, Mistress would have 0.5 points more than the queens with 4 points. And with the manipulation of placements in the next episode, meaning in episode 6, they could ensure that nobody was going to kick Mistress out of the top 3. Obviously, Mistress did ensure the production would be on her side by being strategic and by being a villain, so we do have to give her props for it. But you can be strategic without being an asshole. Her weaknesses really shown in episodes 10 and 11. And not just weaknesses in drag, but like general insecurities. And you could tell that the show did not want to invest in her anymore, since they now had to tell the story of how the villain was slain, that they helped create during bracket 2. And that's it. That is the video. There were other minimal bits of favoritism or mistreatment, like Olivia not being in the top 2 for the makeover, even though she got better critiques than one of the queens in the top 2. Deja made Rue laugh during the improv challenge, but the production tried to hide Rue's laughter. But Drag Race also then suddenly remembered that they actually should reward talent, so they give Irene the top 2 placement, which, don't get me wrong, is very deserved, but it's silly that the Drag Race, out of any other show, all of a sudden decided to praise pure talent rather than going by the who made Rue laugh criteria. And Phoenix constantly was told that she looked nervous, even though that's just what her face looks like. Yeah, nonsense. Thank you for watching.